Hey, happy Friday afternoon, everybody. And let's see, today, Team Tim is bringing quite the powerhouse of conversation today about how do we sell and deliver cybersecurity, and how do we go from stop selling tools, stop being the Lowe's or the Home Depot, and start being that true business partner. Here with my friend Tim Schnurr from Fort Mesa, Jesse, and Mark. Mark, why don't you say hello, tell us a few things about yourself, and we'll get going here.
Sounds good. Hello, everyone. Mark Howells with Dakota Ridge Marketing. Have about 16 plus years experience in marketing, and we've fully focused now on working with IT service companies, doing everything from lead gen through brand building. And excited to talk about GRC and how we can get into more of the strategic side of marketing around it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And hey, Jesse, welcome to have you back. Always good to see you. Give everybody a quick 30-second in.
Hey, Tim. Super happy to be here. Happy Friday, as you said. My name is Jesse Miller. I'm the founder and principal consultant with Power PSA. We help MSPs scale and build security programs. And again, excited about this panel, stoked to have such a wide variety of opinions, and looking forward to getting started.
You know, as they say, opinions are like noses. Everybody has one, and they all smell. And of course, you know our friend Tim. Hey, Tim, quick intro to you.
Thanks, Tim, for having me on. Tim Schnurr, Fort Mesa. Fort Mesa is a vCISO toolkit, allows MSPs to offer vulnerability management, asset management, and compliance as a service.
So awesome. Thank you. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm Tim Golden, CEO of ComplianceRisk.io and MSP Vital Tech Services. So yeah, without further ado, I mean, why don't we just kind of get right into it here? Let me go ahead and share this. And how do I sell, deliver, and evidence? Oh, I love that word, right? How do we do this stuff, right? So let me just see here real quick. Tim, do you have the ability to advance the slides? If you don't, I will.
I do not. I think it's on you, Tim. Yeah.
All right. So
awesome. So I'll jump into this one, Tim. Yeah, I mean, like the slides really, we're talking, I think one of the big objections we get talking to MSP partners is, I've had this customer for 20 years, 15 years. They're paying the same price for the last couple of years. Like I kind of have a static offering of tools in my stack that I offer them for cybersecurity. And how do I broach the conversation? How do I talk about, offering something new? Because I think I usually get a little bit of pushback. So, I think the big, Jesse had a great comment when we were in the green room here. Jesse, you want to talk about kind of like, what, why do you need to why does cybersecurity, like, what you're offering the client evolve? So,
yeah, no, it's so, it's funny because I always think about back, my dad was into computers. He was a Bill Gates fanatic back in the day. And so I had an early introduction in the 80s and early 90s into computers when not a lot of people were doing it. And I remember he built a Windows NT network for his HVAC company that he worked for, and talked everyone out of doing paper invoices. We're going to do this digital thing. And everybody basically fought it and said, what do we need computers for? We don't need computers. We can build from paper just fine. Mm-hmm. And put it in, had this huge revolution in terms of process and efficiency. And it's kind of where we're at with cyber today. Today, you wouldn't think of saying I can do business without a computer, but people were saying that 20, 30 years ago. And I don't think you'd say, you're getting to the point where you can't say, I'll do business without cybersecurity. And so we're at that exact tipping point. And I think the conversation, the short version of that is, hey, we didn't make this world. We're just living in it. And we're trying to help you survive and play the eternal game, as Simon Sinek says.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's funny that you should mention NT because, we're going through a little office reshuffling, kind of, I don't want to say downsizing we're getting rid of space that's no longer used. And I opened up the door and I was looking in the IT room, and there on the shelf was like 5 copies brand new in the box of Windows NT Server. And I was like, I could probably eBay that. Right. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, Windows Office 2007, I think, on floppy disk. It was like 50 of them. And it's like, this is crazy. This is crazy. But you're right. Like, as humans, we evolve. As businesses, we evolve. Technology has been a way for us to evolve, like you said, going from paper invoices to now electronic. And as we progress through the technology realm, right, we get into this whole piece of cybersecurity and the things that, tend to, get in the way, right?
Yep. These 5 steps, Tim, I think we all know them well, right? From NIST. Right? So talking about here, when you look at large enterprises, like where do they excel, or like where do they feel like they're very comfortable? 1, 2, 3, identify, protect, detect. Right, like largely left of boom. Maybe kind of 3 is, I don't know if you consider that left of boom or right of boom, Tim, but they excel, right? Like in the identify and protect area. And that largely is what we talked about in the previous week about GRC, right? Like a lot of the people and processes, a lot of the hardening, a lot of the cyber hygiene and posturing, they really excel in that. And like as an MSP, we're trying to offer those same kind of capabilities, which is hard, right? Like as we said, you're kind of stuck in a rut where you've offered the same things. And where do how do you kind of like emulate a large department of people and do something like that? We're not usually here to talk solutions, right, Tim? So, or products out there, but there's certainly some things that can help you do that. But I think the conversation today is really about how do I like start to build a mental model of like, I offer everything at a per seat per month basis. Like, how do I start to think about how can I at least sell some of these things and offer them and get them implemented in the customer? So,
yeah, this is a great comment here, right? So, so to add to Jesse, right, the perceived value, and I literally just had this conversation with one of my clients today, right? As MSPs, we hear the objections. I'm too small. They're not going to come after me. It's not going to make me rounder or faster or save me money. But the reality is, and I just Googled real quick, his business category in our state, and the words cyber breach, and the top 12 things were recent cyber breaches in our state in his vertical. And he was like, oh, so yeah, when we look at I'm too small, like there was actually one of his competitors was listed there that had a data breach notification that they had to put out. And he was like, oh my gosh, I know them. They're one of our competitors. They had a breach. Oh my goodness, we could have a breach. So yeah, like Jesse said earlier, when he went from paper-based to computer-based invoicing, they gained some efficiencies. When we go from non-cybersecurity to a more cybersecurity, building that resilience in our MSPs and in our clients, we're going to end up saving them money because we're going to try to do everything we can to protect that breach, right? I mean, what's the average cost of an email address on the dark web right now? Is it $1.50, $2, right? And if you look at your CRM and you have 50,000 contacts in there, that's a value, right?
Yeah. It's in risk. We talked about GRC, the R and the risk right there. I think we talked about this last week. A dollar saved is a dollar earned, right? So like, your customer's passionate about their business. They want to protect it. It's really playing offense. So, it's tough to broach that subject about like how you're protecting their value, but I think that's a good way to like show value.
Well, yeah, I mean, as Eddie pointed out in the comment, right? Like, it's a little less intangible, right? We're going to do some voodoo magic over here to kind of block the things that you don't see, right? Jesse, you're on a farm, and I literally dealt with this morning. Like, I have moles in my yard eating my beautiful flowers, and it's driving me crazy. Like, I don't see the moles, but I am seeing the destruction, right? So just like protections in cybersecurity, we're going to put these barriers in place so that the moles don't eat my plants, right?
That's right. And don't get me started on gophers either. So that's a topic for another day. But I think that is a major piece, and Eddie's touching on something there, is cybersecurity can be less tangible. But that is really, I think what we're going to be talking about later is how do I evidence that cybersecurity, and how do I create and tell stories with the data and show metrics about how it's actually bringing value to the business. And I won't go too much down that rabbit hole yet, because we're going to get there. But I think, I always say to my people, it's one thing to do a great job. It's quite another to show the customer that you're doing it. And so there's pieces to that of making it tangible. So that's a huge part of a successful security program, and becoming that advisor to your clients is making those results tangibles. And there's ways to do that, which we're going to talk about.
Right. And Mark, I'm sure we're going to get to this, right? So being able to tell my client, right, in a message or a story, as Jesse suggested, of, we're putting in the barriers that you don't see. It's the voodoo magic, but yet you see nothing, you hear nothing. So being able to, communicate that to our clients. Mark is going to get into that hopefully real quick.
Yeah, we'll get into it, but it is interesting just because I've seen all the data, and it speaks to who's on the other side of that marketing or selling, that messaging that you're doing, and what they're interested in. Because, for me, I'm more technical in nature, and a lot of you are, of course. That data speaks volumes, right? When you see the breach numbers and the amounts behind it and everything like that, it speaks volumes. But for certain small business owners, that may not be that aha trigger that is needed to move, them to work with an MSP, for example. So that's where the stories come in, as Jesse brought up.
So Tim, my favorite subject, we all know. Tell us thoughts around GRC.
Yes, so I think we drove into this last week, right? So GRC, governance, risk compliance, it is kind of a loaded word sometimes, right? Like, I think you were on a podcast earlier this week, Tim, talking about compliance as a service, right? Like, what does that mean? What does it entail? I'll tell you what, it's certainly more than, cybersecurity is about people, processes, and technology. And a lot of the GRC has to do with the people and processes, the policies and chain of title, right? Like incident response, right? Like who's in charge of what, when, where, how often do we do things, right? Like a lot of its technology is just really used to implement or support or, to really enforce GRC, right? Like all the processes around people. So hope that's a good 30-second elevator recap of last week. But
yeah, so I love the word governance, and it kind of scares people off because it has the word not to be confused with government, right? So this is what I'm trying to help bring to the space is the governing piece, the ability to have a process, the ability for checks and balances. Tim, you mentioned, what was the word you just used? Chain of custody. Thank you. You mentioned chain of custody, right? So when we think chain of custody, we think like the police and evidence, and I have an evidence bag, and I give it to the next person, and they have to sign off that chain, right? Being able to back up, this is what we do, this is who authorized us to do that work, and this is how we had end users kind of sign off and accept that is our work product, right? That whole piece of governing, not to be confused with the political governance part of govern, right? But I do love bringing that process, right? So
yeah, I think it's kind of scary, right? Those words too. You're like, I got to play by the rules, and Tim used the word referee a lot, right? Like in some industries, you do have to play by the rules. I'm sorry, but like CMMC and certain industries, like you just have to play by the rules. But I think for generally like MSPs dealing with non-regulated customers, which I think, you know, the lion's share of the businesses, they just offer like good ideas and best practices, right? Like you should do this because, like, by the way, it takes a lot of risk off the table. You know, it's not often that the perception is reality of actually taking, you know, risk off the table. So
and Jesse, why do we care about the risk, right? You know, we talk a lot about in the MSP space, like, got to do this because of risk, got to do risk, and it just sounds like a broken record, at least to me, because I hear it a zillion times a day. Why do I even care about the risk? I just want to do my business. I want to, I don't know, sell my cows, milk my goats, and make my
yeah. So inside joke there, folks. I put a picture of a cow on LinkedIn today if you want to go check that out. But so risk is overused for small business. And I think Mark was speaking to this, and I appreciate what he said about this, is a lot of small business owners, you know, 500 and under even, aren't thinking about risk. They don't understand what, you know, actually annualized loss expectancy is, or any of those things. They don't have any sense of dollars being tied to risk. And so risk as a purely KPI metric is not useful in these discussions. But what I will say is we talked about one being identify. And so when we say identify, we think about asset management, but that isn't the whole story. When we there it is. When we identify, we need to identify a baseline for the customer. And what risk is helpful for is to identify a baseline risk. And so customers do understand red, yellow, green. They understand a stoplight. And so you take that conversation out of purely numbers and into a metric or a story, like Mark said, that makes more sense. So if you run a risk assessment, easy risk assessment for all your clients, because you know their environment so well, and I rant on this about LinkedIn all the time, and have an easy to understand scoring system that puts them in a red, green, or yellow category, you know, 90 to 70, 70 to 50, whatever the case may be. And you can go to the client and start the conversation there. Okay, you're at a 70% risk. Without our MSP services, you'd be at a 90% risk without patching and things like that. But especially if we're running similar verticals and we have an ICP defined, we can say other clients in your industry are typically at a 30 to 40%. So again, you're outside of the band of where your industry is. You're falling behind and you're not going to be competitive. That makes a ton more sense to a business owner than some 87% risk number. However, risk as a baseline and as an identification piece is extremely important to start that conversation and then track it over time. And that leads into making the risk measurable and quantifying what we're doing for the customer over the course of the contract.
So basically what you're saying is give my client some kind of visual cues that say, this is what's going really well and kind of where we need to help, right? So just like my doctor does, like, hey, it's really good that you're getting a full night's sleep, but the bag of Doritos that you ate before you went to bed, not a good idea.
Yeah. So risk as a number, that's helpful for us, the MSP, right? But that's our job, is to be technical. Now, but what risk does is enable, we are to be the interpreter for the client, and that goes into that business conversation, sitting down and having that business conversation as an interpreter and putting it into meaningful terms in terms of a story that the client can make actionable.
Nice. So I think where we're headed is down this, how do we differentiate ourselves by using things like a governance, risk, or compliance set of mentalities, right? Is that kind of where I think we're headed?
I think this is Mark's forte, right? Like really not talking about current customers, but the ones you're trying to attract. So go ahead, Mark.
Exactly. Yeah. No, attractive differentiation. We've focused with this on a ton of MSPs, just because I think there's 50,000 plus now in the U.S. MSPs, and they're all looking, how do I do something different? How do I differentiate overall? And really, this comes down to just positioning of how the potential clients feel about you and feel about your brand and everything. And GRC is one of those things that, people love frameworks, especially proven ones. And in this shift, you're shifting from selling tools versus kind of strategic value overall. And so making that change, both, from a marketing perspective, from a providing the service perspective, that definitely is going to differentiate you against your competitors out there.
So if I had to think of this, like, I'm more of a general contractor. Yeah, I have my plumber, my electrician, I have my SOC, my SOAR, my SCENE, my GRC, my EDR. Like, as a general contractor, I'm going to work with the homeowner, in this case, the MSP, or the strategic business partner, work with the client as the GC. Hey, here's what we're seeing. Here's how we can help. You probably don't want that kind of countertop. You probably want this because our areas of expertise show that this is better, right? So bringing that strategic value to your clients as that business partner, not just as a ones and zeros, tabs into slots kind of thing, right? Is that kind of where you're headed with this?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's two pieces to it. It's kind of the messaging piece, the marketing piece about bringing everything under one nice. I think of it as a package with a bow on top, if you will, and pushing that out there as well as just how you package the services, honestly. And what you're showing on the screen here is just a way of messaging. This is what we use with all our clients, and so we call it the FBBS method, and basically it's just a framework to run through. So
right,
it's
stop.
what
I'm always going to stop people and qualify acronyms. What does FBBS stand for?
Thank you. Yes.
Bullshit.
Yeah, the BS at the end, we question that, but so as you see on the screen there, feature, benefits, business benefits, and story. And so it's really a way for any business to take a service, their whole, business in general, whatever it may be, and push it through this method and come up with the messaging that's going to align with your target audience and get somebody excited about something. As everyone was talking about earlier, they may not understand this, they may not be engaged by it. So feature is obviously going to be GRC. That's what we're talking about here. The benefits side of things, what are the direct benefits? And this is honestly where a lot of MSPs stop. They list out, here are my service benefits, right? We're doing RMM. Here's what it does. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it. And that's where they stop. And what we're really trying to get businesses to understand, and everyone on the call to understand, is you have to go further. You have to, bring this out and unearth all these pieces and develop stories out of this. So, I was thinking everyone on the, call could talk through or talk about the GRC benefits. So I'm thinking like, enhanced security posture, protect customer data, different things like that. It's just those 1, 2, 3 list pieces. That's the second step of it. But then you want to go further and get into the business benefits of it. So thinking about profit preservation and ensuring business continuity and, building customer trust. That's really what is going to hit the mark when you're talking to these business owners, honestly.
So what you're suggesting, right, is that you have a framework for doing this, right?
Exactly.
And it's all around not just the feature and the benefits of those features, but the business benefits and then the story that goes along with that. And, as somebody that's eyeball deep into building your story brand, I love that because, people like stories, right? That's why I keep using analogies, right? Because people can relate to them. So, yeah, I think we're going to kind of get right into how do we start to build that story, right? Let me see. There we go.
Yeah, so really the story side of it, and you can see the business benefits, just to circle back to that, it's the outcomes, the results. But the story side of it, it's so important because it's really relying on, experience and kind of emotional shifts and observable results and the impact on people. And that, to Tim's point, that's why we go to the movies. That's why we read books. That's why we connect with people and they go into something that's interesting to them. And we really start to develop a relationship there. that's what we do, as marketers, is try to build those relationships between two people, between two companies. And that's what this needs to do, because, and we've seen it over and over again, not to belabor the point, but the data about, malware and different things like that, business owners, it goes, they're just like, that's great, wonderful, but it's not going to happen to my business, to someone's earlier point. So we have to develop these relationships and build off of that.
So Jesse, talk to me a little bit about what business benefits our clients might have when it comes to governance or risk and compliance and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think first of all, you have to know who you're talking to and what their role is in the organization. So if they're a CEO, okay, or the business owner, are they the sales leader? Are they the support leader? Are they the customer service leader? The decision maker, what's important to them? And I think a great exercise, which Mark can probably talk about, is kind of writing a story about this person. List who the person is, talk about what they do, talk about what's important to them, and start thinking that way. So for example, a sales leader in a business, who typically a founder of a small business is concerned about, making sales. So talk about competitive advantage and start sussing those things out, finding trigger words that show them how cyber presents a competitive advantage to them. That's just one example. I love Tim's ism that Tim Schnur, I should say, that says $1 saved is $1 earned. So if you're talking to a finance person, talk those models, talk about ongoing services, vCISO services, talk about how that's going to help them with cyber performance management, getting the most out of their spend. So talking about things like, hey, we're going to take your tools and we're going to take these tools and actually help you get the most out of them. We're going to ensure your vendors are giving you what you want. These are all stories that help them, that sit in their chair and say what's important to them. But I think a great exercise is going and writing these things down as if you're that person and trying to imagine what's important to them.
I think what you just described is what I've been learning through StoryBrand is ideal customer profile and personas, right?
Personas, yeah.
Personas, right? And so, we've got a Slack channel on the side. We've been talking about the personas, right? Who are the people that we are trying to message to, and what would they look like? Not physically, but they would have these attributes, as Jesse said. It's a salesperson trying to meet their quotas, do their job, gain efficiency. And so maybe there's 12 different CRM tools where there's data all over the place. And, a GRC process could suss all that out and realize why are you using Dynamics and ActiveCampaign and HubSpot and you have data everywhere, making that sales human very inefficient and very susceptible to data leakage, right? This is where things like a GRC could come in, right?
Yeah.
So Tim, any thoughts, any conversations about sort of the benefits around the whole GRC stuff and kind of the messaging, as Mark put it, the FBBS, the feature, benefit, business benefit, and story?
Yeah, I think Jesse made a great comment just a minute ago about maximizing the value of those current tools. So you've got an EDR product, you've got MFA, why do my employees have to go through this like annoying authentication process to get into the things? Like, I think you have to you have to kind of explain. It's difficult to explain why security is necessary, but walking through their job functions, talking about like how you can make their day better, as Jesse loves to talk about automation, right? Like how can they get their day done, in 6 hours instead of 9 hours, right? Like a lot of this stuff will, in having those conversations, will leak into like, security flows and like data flows and, why we have security and where the security is. So, just start those conversations and keep having those conversations. The more you talk, the more it's going to come out. But I love that comment, as he said, like, how do you maximize the value of those current cybersecurity tools? So,
and I'm gonna key in on that real quick, because as an MSP with a arsenal of tools, I am getting from vendors why their tool benefits me all the time. Buy my thing, make millions with my thing, do your thing, use my thing, right? And
Zero
we get
risk. All risk
right?
removed, right? Yeah.
So
100% guaranteed, no breach.
I want to flip this for a second, right? So we're seeing that message as MSPs, as IT service professionals. We're getting that message from the vendors in the chat. How do we learn from that and then pivot that to messaging that to our clients, right? And I'm actually going to throw a challenge out there. It's probably going to get me in trouble, but I'm going to say for any vendors that might be listening, helping the MSP community discover the value, the business benefit for their end clients. If you can figure that out, you're going to win, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to hear about how it's benefiting me. I want to partner with you, Mr. and Mrs. Vendor. Give me what I need to bring that value, those business benefits to my clients. So that's the challenge. I'll probably get crap for it later, but here we are. Real quick, chat came in with a few examples, names removed to protect measurable business benefits. And what was the story that was told? Let me throw that up on screen real quick and see if anybody wants to tackle that one.
Few examples with injured.
I mean, I've got a couple that probably are less security related, but anything with automation, right? Reading documents, copying and paste into another document using OCR, object character recognition, right? Things like that, where start to talk about ChatGPT. How dare I? But all these tools out there, right? Like, you're the tech nerd, you're the geek. You're supposed to come in there and like have your magic wand of things you can offer the customer. So it's pretty endless. I guess with security, obviously we're up against the wall of like, how does it make them more productive when, as Eddie mentioned earlier, most of security is kind of frictional in terms of like the daily workflows, but you've really got to be creative.
So Chris wasn't a plan, but I'm just going to kind of pull this up, our next slide, where I think Mark was actually heading, right? Stories, what, why, example, right? I think, Mark, you were heading there. So, hey, Chris, thanks for that.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, really just the why and what, as we talked about, they build credibility, connection, et cetera. It's all about being relevant, engaging and creating that connection. To Jesse's point, setting up that persona or ICP prior to, so who you're talking to, and breaking it down is so important. It has to be a real story when you're developing a story. No, fake stories. Understand the intention of the story. So where are you using it? We'll get into some, inbound versus outbound in a minute on channel side of things. But are you trying to get them to click on an ad? Are you trying to get them to engage, in a webinar, understand your service, whatever? And think about the resistance. What does that target audience person want to avoid or overcome? And what are the results for them? So think about all these aspects. And then if you show the slide again, I just wanted to show this because we see this. It's kind of prevalent, I think, across especially MSP marketing. On the left is really what we see a lot of times on a website, right? It's, again, that breakdown of here are the outcomes of this service. Boom, that's it. Versus telling a story. And so, this example was, Jessica is the owner of a small financial firm. She's experienced a breach that almost brought the company to its knees. She wanted to ensure that her business was more secure in the future. She was also aware of the ever-changing regulatory compliance, coverage. After research, she decided to work with us at ProTech based on our GRC framework. We helped her company by implementing a set of policies, trained employees, worked with leadership, and have effectively managed their compliance through a GRC software. Resulted in a culture of value-based security, and thanks to this, she's seen a 5.6x ROI on the money spent on the GRC program. And that is a real stat, actually. Dollar spent on cybersecurity, 5.6x ROI. So it's something like that where it's really engaging. You're talking about somebody specific. I'm connecting with this person. I may be a business owner, a small business owner in, finance, what have you. And I really see this storyline going through, and maybe I've had a breach before. I connect, and guess what? I'm really interested in your services now.
That's hot right there, Mark.
That's really great. So, I could probably pull dozens, like, me, analogy guy, I could probably pull dozens of similar examples, but that's really what it boils down to, right? You said this earlier. Why do we go to the movies? Why do we listen to, TV or whatever, right? Because we want to be engaged with that story, right? We want to know and have that almost emotional connection to why it matters, how it affects me, and what I can do to protect myself against the villain, right? Every story has a villain, every story has a hero. We know all of this kind of stuff, but how we can relate to that in humanized terms and not in ones and zeros and ticket counts and blah, 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 right?
Yeah. I think, and you may have this in further slides, but I think it's important to mention too, that this approach does not just stop after the sale stops. When you get into SBRs, VCSO services, and you're providing ongoing management of the program, it's important to use this framework, albeit in a little bit of a more technical manner, to tell stories to the client and evidence that you're actually doing these services for them each month and what those are, what's actually happening beneath the surface. So I think that's an important piece to this as well, is it doesn't just stop after the sale. You're continually marketing to your client in every touch point with every piece of technical service delivery that you do. And so I think weaving that into everything is important to work on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you say marketing? Oh, wait. Nice cue. I think this is another marketing slide.
Yeah. Just wanted to talk about kind of channels, because that's always the next question. Is great. We have the messaging. We have this idea pulled together. We've got the service set up. What do we do now? How do we get the word out there and promote it? And so just put together a couple things on inbound versus outbound. 3 examples. So definitely adding, obviously, the service, if you're packaging everything under GRC, to your website. Create a page focused on this if it works with your architecture. Up to if you still want to offer current services separately as well, but it's a nice thing to focus on. We always say create, and there's the cow, create a diagram. This one's a little heavy, or there's a lot going on here, but I think create a proprietary kind of diagram for this package service is really important, because people also are very visual. So seeing something, it just, again, aligns with the stories, aligns with everything, and helps them out. Developing content. So whatever you're doing, from blog posts to videos to social, mix this in. The Google trend data, I was actually looking at it yesterday, and searches are increasing around GRC for cybersecurity. So that's something big. You can get more traffic to your site, focus on doing blog posts, again, social videos about this. And then Google search ads. It's intent-based. People are searching for this more. Bring them into those service pages, or offer, setting up different offers, which I'll talk about in a second, and building out landing pages around this. And you really generate kind of a good stream of traffic, a lot of interest around this in conjunction with the messaging.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time in my evenings kind of monkeying around with sort of Google search ads, kind of spending a lot of time in keyword research, right? Mm-hmm. Especially under the MSP side, trying to figure out how to target customers, what keywords work, and I've heard both sides of the Google paid ads, right? I've heard major success stories and I've heard major failures, and I've actually experienced both, right? So I would never tell anybody, don't dive into, spending money on Google search or any search ads for that matter, without hiring an expert. And before you hire that expert, do your due diligence on that expert, right? Because I've had great success and I've been burned really bad. And so, and I like to think that I know a little bit about this stuff, but, and so, yeah, I would just caution, like, it can be really great, were really bad. So
Yeah.
yeah. So anyways, moving right along, we talked about outbound, but I mean we talked about inbound, but now we got this other side of the coin, right?
Yeah, so outbound, and we really like doing kind of a two-way street, right? Inbound can take a lot longer time and everything, but it's one of those brand building efforts that, as a company, you need to do. On the outbound side, though, we really believe in, targeting people. ABM, if you've heard of account-based marketing, but getting a target list together of those C-suite people that you're really trying to hit, and then using that across these different channels. So things like offer advertising. Is it a white paper about how GRC, trickles down to profit protection? Things like that. Is it a free consultation on the level of employee risk at a company versus how GRC mitigates that risk? Different ideas that you can come up with. And then we've been honestly using with clients recently LinkedIn conversation ads. If anyone hasn't heard of that, it's kind of it's a shift from InMail over to almost like a chatbot style ad. Where people choose your own adventure. They have up to 5 different options and can go down different paths. So that would be a couple things. Email outreach. Email is still, an important mix in your marketing budget, but target list again, setting up an email sequence, and then lastly, just webinars. You guys are all here. We're all here. They work. They bring in leads, and it's a nice combo of leads and the ability to showcase thought leadership and experience. And so, as an MSP, it aligns perfectly with that. What we're trying to get you to do, which is shift that mindset from tools to strategic value. So that aligns with the webinar, I think, perfectly.
Nice. So what's next here? Oh, we kind of get into some of the same old stuff that we've been talking about for months and months and months. I kind of want to have some conversation. Let me see if I can find that slide. Right, measuring stick. Here we go. That's the one I'm looking for. Let's do this. Is this what I want? Yeah. How do we monetize this? Right, Mr. Tim? Right, Jesse? How do we monetize this? Because that's what we want to do, right? While we want to protect the businesses, we got to make money along the way.
Yeah, I'll jump on that quickly, and hopefully people can piggyback off this a bit. But I think that you need to monetize risk. You do have to do some sort of a fixed fee, separate consulting engagement for vCISO services, and that has to be ongoing. So a lot of MSPs that I talk to still aren't doing this. Hey, we sell, we force clients to use our 5 main security tools, our low watermark, but we're not talking to them about security monthly or quarterly. It's just kind of, they have the tools and now they're safe. Well, the conversation stops there. And so you're just dead in the water, and you're never going to move things forward. You're never going to be that trusted advisor. So monetizing risk, monetizing GRC, you have to include vCISO services as part of your security package. And that should be always included in your quote. And you should be ready to talk about why that's important. A security program is not effective without somebody who's accountable that manages the program. And you're never going to do anything about risk if you just have a number and you tuck it and put it in a drawer and nothing happens about it. You need somebody accountable to drive that program forward, to ask the customer, are they getting their job done? Because they have some onus in this as well. And so I think short answer, monetize that by including vCISO services, which help not only push the program forward and show the customer improvement month over month, but also uncover IT projects and secondary channels of revenue with your existing clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you make a really good point, right? And so, like in that prospect meeting that I had under my MSP this morning, same thing, right? Here are the risks, here are the benefits, here is the story, here are the rewards, here's the estimate. And one of the things right on the estimate is vCISO as a line item, right? So, we can do a whole nother webinar. In fact, go check out our friends at Lifecycle Insights. They've just done this really great series on virtual chief information officer, chief security officer, something beyond the account manager, right? So lifecycleinsights.io, you can find them on LinkedIn and YouTube. Yeah, you'll find them. Anyways, don't want to go down too much of the VCSO stuff because Alex and team over there is already doing a really great job of helping MSPs in that space, right? But plan, market, sell, staff, execute, evidence. Wow, that is a lot of pieces of the process of the puzzle, right? Maybe Mr. Schnur, you can tell me a little bit about the plan part. What would that be?
Yeah, so I mean, Jesse just mentioned that. When you think about a typical engagement, like most MSPs are a fixed monthly price per seat. This is very people and processes, and it's going to require human labor to, get through these long frameworks or roadmaps. You want to call them? I like to call them roadmaps more than frameworks. And you think about, CIS IG3. What is it? 165 controls. Ooh, that's scary. Like, how am I going to build that out, make progress over time? I won't stump for my own platform, but you need a tool that will orchestrate, plan, task, schedule the people out over that time period, and the ability to kind of like stretch out the roadmap. It might take 2 years to get through a CIS IG3, and there's no shame in that, right? Like, you're making gradual progress from week to week, month to month, working on controls with the client, having them contribute and, having them do their homework, you doing your homework, kind of like doing the work, and making sure you plan carefully so you get those 50 to 70% margins, which are kind of like where you certainly want to be in cybersecurity. So, that's the way we think of it. And like, from a mental model, like, you're going away from, as we said, reselling tools on a monthly basis to kind of this like long roadmap, which typically is like kind of fits in with the break fix model. And we've got partners that are break fix. We have partners that are on a monthly basis, but everyone's kind of embraced this, building a plan or roadmap, and take things out of the roadmap, right? Like, if there's CIS controls, like, there's some expensive controls in there, right, Tim? That would require some expensive tools or expensive processes to do it. And maybe you bill for those extra, right? So like, how do you build your SKUs? How do you build your stack, as we constantly hear in the channel? How do you come up with like, what's ideal with my the team I have and the tools I have, or the tools I want to own, right? Like, map them back to CIS, map them back to a SKU, build a roadmap, and figure out how you're going to charge for it and still make great margins. So,
yeah, I'm just going to pull this up here real quick, right? So I say this all the time. You hear me redundant, like, pick something, start somewhere, right? You can grab the CIS controls right off of their website, and you can literally start, and they're even numbered 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, right? And when we look at and iterate, literally one other after the other, right?
And Tim, what do you notice in that column on security function? The order of prioritization in CIS doesn't necessarily line up with NIST.
True. Right, because the first thing here with CIS is figure out what you have, right? What are the devices, right? Inventory, right? Blah blah, all that great stuff. So, anyways, you've heard me say this a dozen times. I'm gonna challenge yet everybody here listening. Go to CIS. Grab the Excel document. You don't have to use the tool today like we would want you to kind of move into a more automated, better process, but grab the Excel document and start on the very first one and dedicate, 30 minutes a week on each category, right? Until that category is complete, and then move. That way you're advancing and you're building that defensibility and that resilience in your own MSP. Once you figure it out internally, then you can start doing it with your clients. And the other part that I hear on that is, great, doing it on my own stuff. Like, I'm not getting paid for that work, but what it will gain you is that efficiency and that understanding, so that when you do get a client that is interested, because of the marketing plan that Mark's outlined, Now you've done the work, and you can say, yeah, I've done this. I do this to myself. I eat my own dog food, or what's the new term? I drink my own champagne, for those that, whatever. Right?
And Tim, it lets you know exactly how long it's going to take. They're like, that control is like a bear, right? So you get an understanding of the budgeting and planning, so that you you think about like, what's this going to take? So.
Oh, wait. Great segue. Right? Damn, I don't even have to plant this stuff. You guys just come right at it. It's like you studied the PowerPoint.
So yeah, one thing I learned in my previous consulting life is what you do doesn't, it matters, but what your utilization is ultimately what matters, right? Like your ability to gain utilization and sell your consulting labor hours services. This is like, metrics like Jesse talks about. He's a KPI guy, right? So when you think about this, and we didn't talk about that other slide, Tim, but left of boom, I think it's largely like it's not unexpected, right? Like if you plan this control out work, like exactly when 1.3 is going to happen and 1.4 and 1.5. What you don't know on a rate of boom is like when the next breach is going to occur, or when you're going to get flooded with incidents or like alerts from SentinelOne or whatever your alert product is. So utilization in GRC is usually very close to what you think it's going to be, and because of that, you can make great margins. Like you can hire the right people, you can basically plan these things out, and you'll sleep well at night knowing you're making that comfy 50-70% margin, as opposed to like putting out fires on rate of boom. So
yeah, so that you make a really good point, right? So when we're doing the the preparation pieces, the alignment pieces, the GRC pieces, those are kind of predictable for the most part. We can plan, we can budget our FTE, our labor, and we can set that time aside and make it very profitable, because you now have a path that is predictable and repeatable. Unlike the other side, when things go boom and you're frantic. Yeah. But what that side does is you're going through that is then it sets you up for when boom happens. You're already well prepared, so boom might not be as catastrophic, right?
Yeah. Well, I think another piece too is that consistency builds trust. And how do we go to that trusted advisor, and instead of selling tools with our client, it's consistently executing against a program and showing them over the course of 3 months, 6 months to a year that we've reduced the risk from 80% down to 40%. And that number has gone from red down to yellow or green. And we've done that consistently. We've moved things forward as we said we were going to, because it's predictable. But that long haul, then, that consistently showing up every day and delivering value builds trust. And so the next time you say we need to do this big lift, the client says, okay, yeah, I trust you. You haven't failed me here. And so there's that intangible piece of the relationship that you're building throughout all that.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So we're coming up here, last 5 or 6 minutes. I'm not going to share hey, where to go? How do we get there? Using my word, let's start your compliance journey, right? How do we get there? How do we move forward? MSPs are busy. MSPs like either don't know what to do, are afraid to ask, or, don't want to make the time, all that kind of stuff. Like, how do I, as an MSP, start that compliance journey? Mark, maybe you can talk a little bit about that. Like, how do I start this FBBS, right? I got it right, I think.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, to Jesse's earlier points, it's all about planning, right? And you do have to sit down and make time. not to use the parallel between an MSP trying to tell a small business to outsource to them, but it's the same idea that we talk to MSPs about is you can outsource that to different companies, and to do that to help you along that journey of creating these the messaging around it, creating the marketing, everything like that. So I'd say that's number one. Number two overall is just back to that point of you need to do it. It's bite the bullet and you'll get the benefits in the long run kind of setup. You have to take the time to do this because it's going to benefit you overall to sit down and actually plan and put the messaging, put the marketing together.
Awesome. So we're going to kind of wrap this up. We got about 5 or 7 minutes left here. Jesse, parting words.
Parting words, I would say, put it down on paper, get something in place, and start formulating a plan. So I think there's been some really great pieces of advice from Mark and Tim and the Tims today. So if you heard something that resonated with you, I think your first step is that you need to start writing that down and start whiteboarding it out. So there's something about putting that down on paper that's going to get the juices flowing and get the process started.
Awesome. Pen to paper. What about you, Mr. Mark?
Shift the mindset to that, strategic value, and let that kind of trickle into the marketing side of things, because that the business benefits and the story messaging, that's what's going to resonate, and you need to showcase that value so it becomes kind of full circle overall.
All right, I'm going to do this. We generally try to keep most of these things vendor or product agnostic, but Mark, give yourself, talk 2 minutes, your story. What is Dakota Ridge Marketing? How might you be able to help our MSPs?
Yeah, sure. So as I said earlier, we work with just IT service companies, so MSPs, cybersecurity, cloud services, et cetera. And really focus in. We actually started years ago as just a strategy company, just because we saw so many businesses jumping right into campaigns. To your point earlier, Tim, about, unfortunately, marketing is the Wild West these days. And so you can go on Fiverr and Upwork, et cetera, and work with someone doing, ads, for example. But a lot of times that holistic strategy is not there. So we actually started just there, giving companies kind of marketing on a silver platter, as I termed it, but found that they didn't really know what to do with it. So we got into the execution game as well. And now, again, we're just working with all types of IT companies on mainly lead gen up front. After the strategy pieces, lead gen up front, doing all types of channels and everything to bring in the leads, showcase ROI, and then getting into more of the brand building pieces, the blog posts, the social media, et cetera. So would love to connect with anyone on the call.
And is that DakotaRidgeMarketing.com, if I had to guess?
It is. Good guess.
Guessed right. Oh my goodness. And Jesse, not to leave you out, but go ahead and tell us about how you help MSPs in the community.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I've became quick friends with Mark because I really feel like my services pick up right where his leave off. So once you've got the leads in and you're in the sales process and you've closed a deal or closing deals, that's where I come in. So at Power PSA, we say we help MSPs build and scale security programs. So that's operations and strategy all the way from RevOps, automating and helping streamline your sales process to get bids out, to help make those bids make sense to the client, to help get you through the sales process, to operations, building out your complete security operations, assessing all your tools, what you're doing in-house and out-house, and then deciding where should we change that? What can we offer? A big piece of it, what you talked about, is mapping the CIS to specific offerings. And then so when you run a risk assessment with clients, you can spit out quotes from that. And then you can identify the top 3 priorities for the client, tell that story to them, as we talked about, and then take those quotes to them within a week's time or less, and which we know helps close the deal quickly. And then once the deal is closed, helping all the process automations for service operations and support operations as well. So it's really a full stack service, helping you build those programs from where Mark leaves off on.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And hey, Eddie, yeah, we like to think it's a great conversation. Go Team Tim, right? And Mr. Tim, why don't you give us some end closing words? We know you're from Fort Mesa. We know that Yeah, go ahead. You take it away.
Yeah, parting thoughts. I mean, this GRC, it's a great business, right? It's predictable, and it's high margin. And I think a lot of partners we deal with like are always underwater. They don't have enough time. There's too many things going on. Like you want to focus on this business. Try it on yourself, right? Tim said, eat your own dog food. Try it on a customer. Get them to do a proof of concept for you. But this is a great business. It's not going away. If you don't do it, someone else is going to do it. You're going to be stuck in the middle. You're not going to get paid for it. So you want to do GRC, and there's people that can help you, right? Like Jesse's out here. Like find a great advisor. Find a great cohort. Find a great product that'll support you. It's a great business, and it's coming. It's reality. Like you have to evidence great security. So like you're gonna have a compliance element to your business. Do you want the stranger in there, or do you want to do it and make great money doing it? So
that's great. That's great. And so thank you everybody for kind of coming in here. Thanks everybody for the comments. The stream will be up. Continue the comments. Do the like, subscribe stuff because we do that, right? So we have a few more sessions coming up with Team Tim in the coming weeks. Keep an eye on the various LinkedIn or Facebook event pages. We'll keep doing this probably weekly, but don't hold me to it, right? So if you do have questions or things that you want to learn about from us as a group or the community, feel free to send them along to us. I'm Tim Golden, founder of Compliance Risk, CTO at Vital Tech, and we thank you so much for your time.